It's on air now. Hello guys, can you hear us? Guys, can you hear us? Hello?
It is on for you, Hello.
It's on.
Guys, if you're opening the tab at the same time, please mute it so we wouldn't have the audio twice. Thank you.
Audio.
Okay, so I think is in partial requirement with the class we have, Communication 2301, supervised by Dr. Abdurrahim Agnaou. In this webinar, we have chosen to speak about the subject of gender equity in the workplace. And joining me in this webinar are my teammates. We have Selma Mouhsine, Fatima Bouhali, Ghita Cherif, and Zineb Zamani. We will try to talk to you about the subject of gender equity by first trying to explain it at the beginning and then speak about different causes, common types of gender inequalities in the workplace, certain outcomes, and finally some solutions. So we will be moving one by the other. I will be moderating this whole discussion as the moderator, and we will be going through different members. And each time, if you guys have any questions, you can drop them in the comments. At the end of the session, we're going to have a small Q&A session in order to answer your questions. Thank you very much. We can start now by Selma.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Selma, and first of all, I will try to explain the whole idea and concept of gender inequality and equity within the workplace environment. So first of all, gender inequality might refer to equal treatment or perceptions of individuals based on their gender. It might have several root causes or arise from, for example, socially constructed roles, or it might be biological. This issue is prominent and has always been nowadays and for centuries, as women had to fight for equal pay, for example, in order to have what is commonly called male-dominant jobs. But they still, and within the workplace environment, they still struggle to achieve the same incomes, which means that they have lower incomes. So according to the gender wage gap in 2016 and 17, women made 0.76 cents to the dollar for every man. Some examples of gender discrimination at work that you might identify with or have one of your friends or family has experienced might be being discriminated as an employee by during an interview being asked discriminatory questions based on your gender. Or another example that has happened to a friend of mine is the fact that she was an employee and she was not hired and promoted, and she was wrongfully terminated based on her gender. And another another instance might be that an employee is paid unequally based on her gender. So the causes for discrimination might be several, and one of them might be the family matters. For example, we all know that women and men are striving to work while having families. And instead, for example, for a woman, instead of being the stay-at-home woman and live that sort of life, she might have to go out and provide for her family by working with or without a partner. And also another root cause might be the pregnancy. So the pregnancy discrimination is when women want to work but are pregnant or have smaller children that are who stay at home, for example, and they have to take care of them. And another issue that a friend of mine has encountered is a problem of ethnicity. For example, immigrant women or women with different ethnicities all over the world earn just as less or as white males or females, for example, in the US. They are overrepresented in the low-paying sector and non-standard occupations, and they are underrepresented in high-paying, high-status jobs.
Okay, thank you very much, Selma. Now I guess we're going to move to Fatima to speak to us about the next point.
Yes, so before talking about the advantages, we need to know what is equity. And just to follow up on what Selma has already said, equity in the workplace means everyone receives fair treatment. There is a transparency to cause and effects, and everyone knows what to expect in terms of consequences and rewards. When equity exists, people have equal access to opportunities. It sets up an advantageous environment for both the employee and the employer. So one of the first advantages would be achievement. The opportunities afforded by an equitable workplace motivates employees to achieve, believing that rewards will be commensurate with effort. Employees with ability and drive strive to shine. This behavior is explained by equity theory, which links fairness to employee effort. When people receive bonuses, pay, and promotions at a job that equitability reward merits, the company end up with the right people in the right places, doing the right things. Equity then sets the stage for a dynamic culture of achievement. The second advantage would be employee retention, where equality also encourages employee retention, and employee who believes he can have a bright future within a company wants to stay and claim it. When employees say companies are relieved of brain drain, the expenses of training, replacement employees, and watching former employees enrich competitors with training provided by the original employer. The third advantage would be attracting talent. Attracting talent is easier for companies that pursue workplace equity and foster a meritocracy than it is for those that do not enough to avoid breaking employment laws. People who have a lot to offer want to be compensated fairly without worrying about hidden agendas that lead to preferential treatments for a chosen few. Talented people are ready to excel and excited that causes and affects roles in the equitable workplace. It means investment of brains, energy, and dedication pays off. It also gives their achievers the chance to work with other achievers. Breadth by diversity. This is the third advantage, which means that diversity is often the result of workplaces that are functioning equality, assuming that the potential workers have equitable access to educational opportunities. Diversities in a workplace means more experience, more perspective, and more source material to draw from the brainstorming, solving problems, and creating innovation products or services. A company's intellectual capital gains depth and breadth through diversity. The fourth advantage would be enhanced bottom line. A culture that achieves process, breadth, and depth, retains employees, and draws top talent, makes a company competitive and favorably affects its bottom line. Such companies also have high morale among employees, which also enhances the bottom line. A 2010 study published in Inc. showed that companies engaging employees at high levels perform better than normal in the stock market and enjoyed higher shareholder returns than other companies. As a last advantage would be motivation. Employees would feel that they are being mistreated and are not likely to want to do their best. On the other hand, those who feel they are being treated with equity and equality are more likely to be motivated to do a good job. They know that they are being judged on the same scale as their peers, regardless of personal differences, so they feel when they do a better job, they will be rewarded accordingly. Therefore, as a result, profits is high. Companies improve their chances of increased profits when they treat employees with equality, because employees give more of themselves to their job and are willing to do more. This combined with the fact that equality promotes the hiring and promoting of the most talented employees, all combine to help companies produce more and at a higher quality to stay ahead of competitive businesses.
Okay, thank you very much, Fatima. I guess your point is quite clear. And again, just as a reminder, at any point, if you guys have any questions, you can always put them down in the comment section. I see some of you are already doing that. And at the end of when we finish our whole presentation, we will have a small Q&A session where we're going to try to answer your questions. And as I told Salim, one of our commenters before, his answer to our question is part of the things we're going to talk about. But still, if he has any doubts or any extra concerns, he can always ask us about them. So now we will move to Ghita to talk to us about the next point.
So thank you, Badr. As my previous teammates talked about, discrimination is a global issue, and it affects at least one of us during our lifetime. So each one of us reacts to discrimination differently. And these outcomes and these reactions can impact not only our life in the workplace, but our life personally. So one of the first outcomes that we may encounter as a result of discrimination in the workplace is violence. People discriminated and the parties discriminated feel feel violented against their own persona. So they become more susceptible and to jokes, comments, or just even words. For example, a woman can be susceptible to a joke made by a male colleague about her performances or her looks or her work. And that engenders a hostile environment where people cannot work and cannot perform to their fullest. People become scared of talking, engaging with other employees, and that results in a hostile environment. Another point is that discrimination in the workplace increases and promotes harassment during the work period. Generally, women are the highest party to be harassed in the workplace. So this violation, it promotes this violation of privacy. It's also another point that is the most current one, is the low productivity among the discriminated party. When the discriminated party feels under attack or under supervision by other parties, women tend to take a step back on their productivity and work. For example, a woman that has been working hard for a promotion or a certain position gets turned off for another employee that is male. This employee will ask herself, why would I keep going through this pace? I should cut back on hours and just do the bare minimum since I am not getting what I want. This also impacts the company PR image, the public relationship image for the company. If the word spreads out that this company has a higher percentage of discrimination among women or ethnicity or other parties, employees will avoid running for position among the company, which will kill the job opportunities in the market. All these outcomes result in personal health for employees. So we will see stress among employees. We'll see another issue that is quite relevant is heart attacks. Heart attacks and stress may engender a hostile environment, as we said. So that is why people try to find and come up with solutions to face these issues.
Okay, thank you very much, Ghita. Now we'll move to our last participant in the debate, in this small panel discussion. We have Zineb. And again, just as a reminder, I see that some of you retracted their comments. We want to remind you that this is a very open space, and we are just here to try to clarify anything about the subject, and we're very much open to any of your questions. And in all honesty, it's your questions that make this discussion more fruitful. So feel free to speak your mind and ask us about anything you might have. We'll move to you, Zineb.
So thank you, Badr. Thank you, Ghita, for reminding us about the previous point that you stated. So when it comes to the solutions, we know that this disparity that you talked about between males and females is slowly changing for the better lately, but it's not quickly enough. And this is why companies today need to reevaluate their policies and processes that relate to the inclusion and to promote confidence in their female employees or male employees. So this gender disparity can be harder to spot than we would think, and it's incredibly pervasive. So sometimes we don't ask the right questions, like, are the managers unintentionally putting the female employees at a disadvantage or the male employees at a disadvantage just based on their gender? Are we creating sufficient open opportunities for both male and female colleagues to aim for promotion? Are we recruiting policies defined on gender equality and providing transparency on ambition for staff demographics? So these are some questions that we need to ask ourselves, and that departments of human resources and managers need to ask themselves when taking decisions. So as a first solution, I would think about the transparency in the pay gap, because the gender pay gap remains a prominent issue and the clearest example of gender equality at the workplace technically. So the openness and transparency with pay figures in the company is the first step in tackling any workplace inequality identified. So assessing where men and women do work of equal value and restructuring the difference between those gaps is a start, and it's a great one, I think. So, however, to really understand the causes, we need to reflect on the figures more broadly. And I think that it starts as our own bias, because we need to challenge our own bias about gender issues in general and inequality in the workplace. So in order to overcome this gender inequality, we must address our own bias, as I said, because gender-related bias that hold women back can include outright discrimination to deep-rooted attitudes. Because this normalization of everyday sexism, it's what has led to the invisible gender bias that we often don't recognize, because human beings don't know how to be wholly unbiased. From the classroom to the boardrooms at an early age, we are conditioned to believe that girls are this way and boys are that way, and we need to challenge these natural thoughts by, critical thinking, examining, questioning, and having open conversations. So another solution that I may think of is to foster the next female leaders, because although men and women have an equal level of ambition early in their careers, but not having a strong role model and mentor throughout a woman's professional development can have a significant impact on how she views her own capabilities and how she views her own career prospects later in life. So if they don't believe they can reach a leading position at a high level, then they don't invest as much time to structure their career plan to attain it. So I think it's important to introduce coaching and mentoring programs to provide women with the opportunities to assess their professional growth, to develop their leadership skills, and to identify a strategy to achieve this. So I think that although it may be tempting to solve gender inequality by concentrating on women, it's important to be gender inclusive, and it should involve both men and women, as initiatives involving only half of the population will likely have reduced results, and it's not the point, basically. Another point is to think of policies to promote gender equality, such as establishing a policy that ensures that men and women are compensated equally. So basically, the wage gap should be reduced at all costs, especially for performing the same work. Because beyond equal pay for equal work, the policy should also ensure that both genders have to be treated equally in recruitment, training, hiring, promotion. It's also important to establish a policy that allows both men and women to balance their work lives with their personal lives, because, this guideline would ensure that the management supports the employees' pursuit of further education, family counseling, family time, or other efforts that assist employees in maintaining their positive family relationship. And this should not be exclusive for men, for women specifically. It's also important to establish a policy that strictly forbids any form of sexual harassment. It's either in policy itself or in a related human resources procedure. It's important to forbid any form of sexual harassment, and to provide employees with an avenue for reporting such activity directly to the Human Resource Department without fear of retribution or of, the Human Resources blaming the person for an act like sexual harassment. Also, the non-discriminatory policies have to apply to the company's employees, also apply to all the levels of the company management. And gender equality means nothing in the workplace if it's not followed to the letter by all the management team or personnel. And it's important to encourage managers to act as role models for non-discrimination. And it's also important to provide training on gender equality to these managers and to educate them in both the obvious and the subtle discrimination that take place in business, because I think managers have to be aware of these issues, and they have to be taught on how to identify discrimination when it takes place among their staff, and how to deal with this situation and how to prevent it from happening in the future. Also, we have to rethink job interviews, and that's for the recruitment process. I think the questions that, like, what do you think your salary would be, should be abolished altogether, because women consistently ask for less than men. Questions like about family life in general, about what kids or being married or single should be banned also. Gender equality has to be a part of the training and education, because young people should be supported in choosing jobs that are future oriented and promising, and that regardless of their gender. And another point is to make flexibility and work-life balance a part of the wider company culture, because too often employees have to specifically ask to work part-time or work from home, which can be, not as fulfilling. So companies should offer a broad range of different options, and that as well, regardless of the gender of their employees. And we should be proactive about welcoming women, because companies should clearly state that they want to hire, support, and promote women, because it's important to remind women of that. And salaries and promotions should be monitored and evaluated on a regular basis, also to ensure equal treatment. And on another note, there are a lot of organizations that take care of those issues, like the UN Women Watch, the UNIFEM. It's also part of the United Nations. And within the workplace, it's important to remind the employees that if any problem occurs regarding this issue of gender inequality, that they should and they need to talk to the managers and to the HR department. They should not have a fear of talking about this, because it's important. It's the first start in order to overcome this issue. And this is why we need to, not normalize this, but like the employees should not fear about talking about these issues, because it's really important, and this is the first way to overcome this.
Okay, thank you very much, Zineb, for this last point. So again, this was pretty much it for the presentation of the different points we will be talking about. But for the people who might have not tuned in, like from the very beginning, I'm gonna give you a small sum up of like the things we have talked about. So we have started by talking about like gender equality, its definition, and like trying to clearly specify the difference between gender equality and inequality in order to have like a more directed and more specific conversation. Then we talked about some of the causes that might lead into having such inequalities within the workplace. And then we talked about some of the common types of gender inequalities by some examples and like certain types of inequalities that happen in the workplace on a normal basis. Finally, we have talked about some of the outcomes that these gender equalities might have on like the person psychologically, physically, and like how big and how these consequences can go. And like finally, Zineb has talked about the solutions that we might at least suggest in order to deal with inequalities, maybe to actually deal with them, but at the same time also to try and prevent them. So that was pretty much like a small sum up of everything we have talked about. And I feel like the subject of gender equity in the workplace is very, very important, especially in our context in Morocco. We feel like it's a very prevalent subject, and it keeps happening that women cannot feel like the workplace is a safe environment. And it feels like out of all the other places where this might be an issue, the workplace is the last place where it should even be talked about, because if we can't feel comfortable in a workplace, then what about everywhere else? It limits productivity, and it creates a very, very big problem when it comes to dealing with everyday life. So yeah, now we will move into the Q&A session. We already have some questions from you guys. I'm gonna leave the floor to my teammates to answer some of the questions, and thank you very much.
So, hello everyone. As you might know, I talked about the outcomes of gender discrimination and discrimination in general in the workplace. So I'll be answering Bushruk Zineb's question. She told us, are there any organizations in Morocco that women can go in case they found themselves victims of gender inequality in the workplace? So, Zineb, to answer your question, unfortunately, in Morocco, we do not have specific organizations to help with gender inequity in the workplace. We have HR department that are responsible for everything that has to do with human resources and human relationships in the workplace, but we do have in Morocco what we call Mra Women, an organization defending violence against women and discrimination in general. But we do not have a specific organization tackling discrimination in the workplace. But we sure hope that an organization like this will open up soon for women facing discrimination in the workplace.
Okay, and just as a follow-up, like I would like to say that in the context of Morocco, maybe we don't really have that many like organizations. There is just like one of the examples, but the thing is that if the problem like gets more serious and it goes to a matter of court, there are always like matters you could take into your own hands. And actually, like the thing is, we should never be afraid to actually like get a case out there and get the support of the public. And at the end of the like at the end of it, we might get our rights back, and we should never be afraid to actually make that step forward and like ask for our rights. Now, Fatima will be answering one of the next questions.
Yes, so I will be answering El Ghami Haytam's question. He said, why should men be always the ones to blame, knowing that women also play a role in discrimination? So just to start with that, we're not blaming men in this particular presentation. It was more about the equality between both genders. However, although women do actually participate in gender discrimination, I wouldn't say that men actually suffer from it as women do, especially if we see, for example, as like the most common example we can use is the payroll, and how women almost all over the world get paid less salary for the same work presented. But yes, I don't see where you got the idea that we're blaming men, because I don't think we addressed that. But just to clarify, we're not. We're just saying that but gender equality should either be men or women as a victim should be in the workplace. So yeah, I will see who's want to answer the next question. I think Badr is.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Fatima, and like thank you for your like specific question, for your answer to that question. Like as we said, this is just a presentation, and we're not really trying to put the blame here, as it's one of the issues that are always out there. If you have any kind of follow-up, you can always post it down in the comments. And also for Salim, as I told you before, like it was part of the points, like speaking about the solutions. But if you want to ask like extra questions or want to have clarifications on one of them, you could always do that. I will be answering Nashit Reda's question. And first of all, I would like to very much like point out that I'm very happy that the thing he said is how to make a positive impact, because we always talk about solutions and like big things, but sometimes it's all about the small actions we can do in order to make a positive impact on gender equality at our organization. So like one of the things I would say is that it might start with like some general rules that you have in your own organization. So for example, let's say you have a startup and maybe you want to make that workplace as gender equality friendly as possible. Like you can have like a set of rules that integrate men and women in very equal ways. And that could be a start of like just setting a basis on having your organization as an example for gender equality in the workplace. Again, one of the other things you could do is just like daily reminders, and again, in the way you present your speeches to your different employees, it's always your like everyday opportunity to actually showcase that the organization you take part of is gender equality friendly and that you support everyone in an equal way. So again, it's about like very small actions that we can do on a daily basis that showcase our overall like direction of the organization. and that at the end of the day should have a positive impact on the employees, because they will feel like they're in a safe environment where they could work in all equalities, with no kind of harassment or anything that they might suffer from. And these on the long term will for sure help with the productivity of the employees and the overall health of the organization that you might be taking. So yeah, that was it for the question you just asked. And I guess I mean the time we have allocated for this is nearly done, but if you have any more questions, we could always take them. I guess we can take 2 more minutes or something in case you guys have any questions. Just interact with us in the comments and we will try to answer the last question or something. Thank you very much. Yes, I guess Fatima will also have a small follow-up that she wants to add something while you guys think of a question. Thank you.
So yes, just to follow up on your answer for Reda, when he said how can we make a positive impact on gender equality, I guess just by taking the smallest steps, I would say, of not having rules within the organizations that are specifically for men and others are specifically for women, as in, for example, I don't know, dress code or somehow. We have actually another question right now from Hidayah, and it says, how can we as women lead impactful in conversation when it comes to letting our male co-workers and colleagues see and acknowledge and barriers that hold us back in the workplace? I can start answering the question if no one... Okay, Selma wants to answer this question.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you very well. Can you repeat it?
Basically, she asked, how can we as women lead impactful conversations when it comes to letting our male co-workers and colleagues see and acknowledge and the barrier that hold us back in the workplace?
I guess one way to actually solve the issue of discrimination or gender bias within the workplace is to start by acknowledging the problem. If it is one of your male co-workers with whom you have the problem, I guess the first step would be to talk about it. Of course, if it is a close relationship with the male co-worker, you have to actually ask for or tell him that you have an issue with this. Of course, there is always the solution of going to the supervisor or the manager within the company, and there are also other solutions such as the company policy, for example, or the bylaws or the HR department. But I would not suggest to go directly to them. I suggest that you ask the person to actually treat you with respect, which you are, of course, entitled to when you are working within that sort of environment. And not only from your male coworkers, but also with your female coworkers, because sometimes those kind of, if you want to have a kind of respectful conversation or fruitful conversation, the discrimination might not only come from male coworkers. And that is one of the issues that people do not actually mention a lot of times. Because people think that being gender, like suffering from gender-based discrimination can only come from male coworkers, which is actually not true. It might also come from female coworkers. But just to give you an overall view about what I think that sometimes it's a problem because the person might not be willing to tackle the conversation, or might not be able to tackle the issue from the root source. Like, instead of, for example, going to the person who has disrespected them or was biased against them, they go to a higher kind of force. And sometimes it leads to them being labeled as a whistleblower. And word wild, nobody likes a whistleblower within the workplace environment. So I think you should just ask for respect, the respect that you deserve, and you will have it.
Okay, thank you very much, Selma, for that last answer of yours. Okay, so I think this will be the end for our small panel in this webinar we have been setting all of us, because we don't want to make this too long, and there was just a 30-minute discussion with some small questions and interaction with you guys. and like that is the main thing that made it as much of a fruitful conversation as it possibly like can be. And so yeah, this was our discussion about gender equity in the workplace, and I think that we could all like, sometimes it's only part, like the main thing we should do is actually start this conversation and be avid promoters of it in our workplace, in our everyday life, because starting the conversation is always the key to get more solutions in the future. I would like to thank all of you guys for tuning in with us. We have had such a pleasure to actually be here in front of you guys and answer your questions, and just having this sort of very nice interaction ground where it's all comfortable, open space where we could share as much as possible. And so yeah, this was it. I am Badr, your moderator for this webinar, and with you there was Zineb, Selma, Ghita, and Fatima with this conversation. And thank you very much, everyone. And that was it. Goodbye.